Hey, Kamal.
Good morning,
How are
Amy. Good
you?
to see you.
Oh, lovely to see you. Lovely to see you. It's so wonderful. We were just talking about, you know, how we met, and we met. You're another person that I met at the Mediterranean Opera Studio and Festival, run by the lovely tenor Jack Livigny. He founded that festival, but yeah, it was just so incredible. We were working on Traviata when I oh
What I remember is that I was just doing orchestra read
yeah.
and didn't think I'd make enough progress to even get to including a singer.
Mm.
And suddenly things were going well with the orchestra. And suddenly, like, there you were. And suddenly we were doing, I don't even know if we'd had a piano session. I don't think we
No,
had.
I
Suddenly we were getting to know each other, doing Sempre Libera across an orchestra of really good young people who had never played Verdi before,
remember.
never played
Yeah,
it, never think of throwing a singer in when an orchestra is reading, but somehow it just kind of made
they
sense.
did.
Like you actually sang really well, and you didn't hate me for it, and it was like it was a wonderful way to start.
I really loved it, and I mean, it was Jack Livigny that kind of got me to get into the role in the first place.
Oh yeah.
And it was just like, oh my goodness, like I can't do that role. I can't do it. He was like, you absolutely can. Da, 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 da. So he was like really inspiring me to get it done, and then you got me through it, which was great.
Well, for people like me that always had a soft spot, I grew up watching lighter lyric coloratures and things do the piece, great ones even. But I always had a soft spot for the Tebaldi and Ponzel and Antonietta Stella, these more full out Verdi sopranos who could sing Violetta. And I've never had a chance. One other time in my life,
Yeah.
I've had a chance to do a Violetta like you and Huitzamang, basically. Huitzamang Lahobie are the only Violettas in that full Verdi tradition that I've taken through the whole piece like this. And it's a joy because it isn't how it always happens, and nothing has to be the same from place to place and generation to generation.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just nice to hear those ensembles really sound connected to the whole Verdian tradition. They're
Oh,
not some specialist act. It's not some almost French opera. It's Verdi.
well,
So
I'm
I love
obsessed with, I'm obsessed with Verdi. So, I mean, I'm going to make my life's work really, But and I'm very lucky to have people like you. And you did my Love and Prayer album as well with me, and you conducted and you coached me, and I just, that debut album wouldn't have been the same without you. So, you know,
and lots of Verdi on that, which I was
lots
very
of
happy.
Verdi on that. Anyway, hello everybody. This is Nadine Benjamin, and I'm the intuitive Verdi soprano. I'm a certified NLP mind coach. I'm a certified high performance coach, and I'm also a healer and a professional opera singer who loves singing all over the world. Now, I love championing, connecting, and celebrating people. And today we are celebrating Kamal Khan. Washington, D.C. native Kamal Khan combines an active performing career as conductor and pianist with a passionate commitment to the globalization of operatic training. He is a founding member of Opera for Peace and artistic director of Classical Vocal Arts International. He has worked with artists such as Placido Domingo, Pretty Yende, and Bryn Terfel. So it's so wonderful to have him here with us this afternoon. This morning, what am I
Sure.
talking about? I'm in two different worlds. But it's so wonderful to have him here. Now, as I always say, please, 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 if you need to reach out to someone, both Kamal Khan and myself are not psychiatrists or medical doctors. So if you need to reach out to someone, please, please do, especially around what the challenging times that we're going through at the moment. And also, if you know somebody who could do with your support, please, please, please pick up the phone, because that would be really lovely to hear from someone who can reach out. So hello.
Hi there.
Oh, I've missed you so much. I haven't seen you for such a long time.
I was going to be in London twice by the time since I last saw you. The things that have changed during COVID, but
Yeah.
hopefully back soon because it's one of my very favorite places to be.
Oh, well, we love having you here. So tell us, Kamal, you know, how did you get into music? How did it all start for you?
Well, I think it started with my mother and my grandmother, but especially my mother being very involved as an amateur musician. Amateur choirs, which I think are so beneficial to every community in which they exist.
Mm.
And the choir was doing, I guess it was the year that I was in kindergarten, half day of school. They were doing Aida in concert version. And so I really, my first experience of listening to the music in the mornings, I was 5, I think. And I just sort of learned to follow the score along with my mother when she would be studying her part or whatever. And so I don't remember when I couldn't read music because I just saw that beginning and I knew what it meant. I knew what the notes were. I was hearing also, we had the great luck, couldn't afford the fancy recordings, but the cheap recording was the old Seraphim one with Giulio Serafin conducting, with Benjamin Ogidi. I was commenting with a colleague on Facebook the other day about how great it was when EMI had that bargain label Seraphim, and it was $2 for an LP. Got the whole of Aida for $6, I think. And it was all these older recordings that weren't as glamorous, of course, but they were where you heard the real old style. So I had a lot of fortuitous coincidences in the way I related to music. And then, of course, obviously, I had to start studying the violin. The next year, they did Beethoven Missa Solemnis in this choir, their big project. And I heard that beautiful violin solo in the Sanctus. And I'm like, Mom, I want to play the violin. I want to play the violin. And she took me to a violinist who was actually the principal second violin in that orchestra. And she said she'd be happy to give me lessons. And then she did some little ear training thing with me afterwards and figured out that I had a good ear. And she said, I'm happy to teach him, but I think this boy should also study piano.
Wow.
So she said, to be a real as a violinist, she said, to be a real musician, you need to play the piano too.
Wow.
And so I thought that was interesting and foresighted of her, a wonderful woman, Charlotte Barrand. And off I went, and I was very excited to play the piano. It's something I took to because I love the ideas musically so much. I don't know if I was like the world's most natural physical with it, but I just loved being able to play multiple parts at once, multiple voices, things like that.
Well, you're incredible. You're incredible on the piano. I mean, you're about one of the only people I know that you can just say, "Oh, I'm working on Traviata," or "Oh, I'm working on Butterfly," or "Oh, I'm working on Tosca," and you can play the whole thing without even having a score.
To play it is like a vacation after conducting them. But it's an interesting thing during this time when we're at home a lot. I've been playing the piano a lot.
Yeah.
And been revising lots of my very basic ideas about how I play, and I think to the positive. It's been a very good reunion.
Yeah.
Piano time.
Oh wow. So was it that you ended up going to conservatoire, or were you privately taught?
Well, in high school years and in junior high, there is a little bit of music in American public schools. At least there was then. Sometimes I'm not even sure there's that anymore. But I was in public school in an era when public schools were properly funded and were seen as being the pride of their community. So while I was in high school, even though I was having piano lessons outside and then singing lessons outside, I stopped playing the violin just when my voice changed and I was able to sing male range stuff. And during that period, even though my studies were outside, I was in like 4 musicals and Amal and the Night Visitors and Bloch Sacred Service and all sorts of stuff in my high school. So that was a very wonderful, again, just lucky chain of events that I was in a community where there was music, and my piano teacher was literally a 5-minute walk from my high school. So after school, I could just go over to her house. If it was too early for my lesson, I could just practice on her wonderful Steinway. I mean, it changed. It made music where I was at home. It didn't matter if I was in the city rehearsing in professional choirs, because I started singing in professional choirs because I could read. I didn't have as great a voice as the older people, but I could read. So it was very useful. And I had
I've
all of
heard
those.
you sing. Your voice is very lovely.
It grew, but they were hiring me to sing choral jobs when I was 15, 16.
Oh wow.
They knew they could get something clean. And I could make a good enough sound, but I mean, I was getting the gigs over some more mature people just because they knew they wouldn't have to take time to teach me notes. Which is an important thing for singers to realize too, is that you've always got something remarkable that can set you apart from a crowd, and to parade those qualities and be unashamed of them is important.
Yeah, I love that. Parade those qualities. So, you're a conductor, you're an accompanist, you're a coach, you're kind of like a mentor as well, you're a professor, there are so many strings to your bow in terms of music. How do you balance all of those things?
Well, one hand washes the other, but you do sometimes feel like an octopus with all the hands washing each other. It, um, the older I get, the more experienced I get. That's how we're supposed to say it now. The richer becomes my experience. Now, when I'm standing in front of an orchestra, I have a great awareness that there's some really young people out there that are well trained and serious, but that don't have the life experience with the repertoire. It takes a certain amount of time. And I feel increasingly like all of my work is either being a teacher or a student, usually at the same time. I was doing a forum with some colleagues, a Zoom forum with other coaches, and we were talking about giving coachings online on Zoom. And I said, I've got a radical question to ask you guys. Have any of you taken any online lessons since this all started? Because I've started taking piano lessons again. I've had now 3 rather wonderful online piano lessons, but you change your attitude towards the online lessons when you're dealing with the frustration of being on the receiving end of them. Ones you grow more patient with people not being able to make the technological leap. There's different things. In fact, my piano teacher said to me last night, my lessons are not in this space. I'm not at my home right now. And he's like, so what can you do about the lighting? Can you get more lighting behind you and things? I was thinking, oh my God. So he's been not really able to see me well these 3 lessons, but was too engaged in the work to want to bother me with it. And now as we're really talking about how the work's going to go forward, he's like, so what can you do about the light? And I realized, holy crap, I've got to really think about how to make the work experience easy for everybody. And how many of the singers that I work with online are thinking about these kinds of things without my asking.
Yeah. So that's the main thing. So in terms of do you concentrate part of your year on being a conductor or part of your year being a coach? Or, how does it work?
It's tended to be that there's a few places that I return to regularly to conduct. For a long time, I was living in South Africa and I was doing a lot there. Past few seasons, I go to Galicia every year, to La Coruña, to conduct either concerts or opera. Operas in concert sometimes. The traveling for teaching, Northern Europe just somehow has become a place where I end up a lot. I will go from the UK to Helsinki to Berlin. That's sort of like my little arc, because I find there's a lot of singers in all 3 of these locations that are very serious about the work. And 3 delightful cities that I miss terribly. So that period tends to be about teaching, although like the last time I was in London, I put in a lot of time practicing because I was preparing for a recital. And when I have recitals, obviously the playing starts to kick in because it's a certain number of hours a day that you need to be doing. The teaching tends to be what falls in the gaps, but it's probably the most significant activity in many ways.
And you're a very popular coach and teacher. I know that. Like when anybody hears that you're in town, they're like, "Why can we get a coaching with him?"
It's wonderful to be around and to have all of that excitement to go on.
It's just So today we're talking about staying creative. Can you talk to us a bit about that and your kind of thoughts on that, especially around the times that we're in at the moment? I think a lot of artists are finding it quite challenging the longer the periods goes on. And obviously none of us have ever been in this kind of lifestyle and pandemic before. And we also have the Black Lives Matter going on as well. Like, how does somebody kind of stay creative?
Well, it's a little bit disconnecting our artistic life from our professional life. For me, it feels familiar because it reminds me of when I was a child and I was first studying, and there was absolutely no connection between financial well-being or even a certain kind of prestige and the time one spends at the piano or the time one is spending studying. I mean, I've been focusing increasingly, as I said, on the piano because some of the conducting engagements I had in August and September have been postponed to 2021. So it's like, okay, there's really no point right now in relating to those scores that were involved as Boca Negra, Cavalleria. It's like, okay, for a while, I'll bring them back up in my restudy a little bit closer to the time. And let's go a little bit deeper into the creativity, the musical creativity. Reading and studying. I've been watching a lot of piano playing online, which I've done for quite a while. And you know, Russian pianists who are very well-known names to people who are piano soloists. But if you're a conductor, you don't, you know, the 1950s and 60s, a lot of those wonderful black and white videos, you hear this titanic immense playing, and then you see the halls that were half full, and you think, oh, that hurts my heart. I should have been there. But it's been very rewarding. I think it's about. I saw something online where somebody was saying, "Oh, now you can see who's in it for the money," and I thought, what he means by that? I couldn't really understand because this is a profession, and part of self-care and self-respect is being compensated for what you do. So I would never shame someone whose relationship to making music for people has changed during this period when most of our work is not compensated. But it has not made me want to perform any less. Not at all. I mean, I was lucky to do a live web streaming that the Kennedy Center was involved in with Larissa Martinez and Joshua Bell a couple weeks back. And we're recording another thing that's going to be for the Casals Festival. They're sort of doing the virtual Casals Festival instead of the famous event in San Juan. But we rehearsed yesterday, and I thought, here I am with probably the greatest violinist in the world as he plays on one of the greatest instruments. There I am playing on his Steinway. And I walk out into the streets, and all the shops are boarded up. And there's a lot of tension in the air. And it's like, you know, this is probably what studying for music has felt like to people less fortunately situated than me their whole lives. That there is this isolated area where you're doing this really refined stuff and working on the rubato and Mendelssohn between the violin and the voice and the piano just to make it click. And you can feel these concepts of integrity and phrasing and style. They're not just air and they're not just a lot of blue smoke. They're real. Yeah. But then you see a different kind of real, you know, just having to, you know, walking a very different path home because all these streets are closed off, and you're like, well, okay. But I realized that for people studying in so many parts of the world, that's what it's always been. And even if I say that, it sounds pretty pretentious to myself, because when I got home, I was home to my apartment, safe and sound, and made a cup of coffee. Everybody's not that lucky.
No. And it is. There is a sense of fortune or privilege or whatever word one wants to put on it when, you know, when we can do the thing that we love, and we have the facility to do it well or to the best of our abilities, and recognizing that that is not the story for everyone. And it is that, and I think that's one of the things around what has happened is people have just noticed just how much their art form actually means to them, and how much presence or how much they've possibly taken for granted, and really finding new ways now to plug into it and to make it, you know, have even more significance in their lives.
I think we all have our area where we're of greatest effectiveness. And in my years in South Africa, I got very used to seeing the differences it could make in people's lives. this giving people access to opportunity, but then also actually staying in there and teaching them. Actually, you know, when a fourth year theory professor fails someone and they have to come back for an entire year to take one course, having to hold their hand and say, but you're worth this. This is actually something you're doing for yourself. Don't give up just yet. There's a lot of wonderful young people in their late 20s and early 30s singing opera all over the world now who I know wanted to throw in the towel. I know one of them burned all of her scores. She and I laugh about it now. Cause like, yeah, mezzo, so big dramatic gesture, burn the scores.
Wow.
Yeah, mezzo's other chain, they've got a thing about fire. But you know, now we can laugh about it because she sung Ulrika at the Wiener Staatsoper. Who can ever take that away from her? And it's crazy by pressing at. There's different ways of pressing at systems of privilege. And ultimately, the best thing I can do is use what I've learned in as generous a way as I can so that more people are just walking around singing better. You know, I just want there to be more good singing in the world. I don't really care who they're studying with or who's giving it to them. I just want the whole thing. The whole a rising tide does lift all boats if it's actually the whole river or lake that's rising and not just a little secluded marina which we have, cordoned off.
Yes.
You know, that rising tide lifts all yachts. I want the rising tide that lifts all boats.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of people kind of thinking, what can they be doing in terms of staying creative? What kind of thing would you kind of move them towards? I mean, you've started playing the piano, and really, myself, I've started looking at my Italian actually because I realised, and I've made a couple of decisions around that just because I've been doing a bit of that every day actually. So it makes you have these different decisions. And also I've gone a little bit back into songwriting, which I used to do all the time before I was in opera. And I kind of feel like, did opera take it away or did I take it away from myself? One of the two, but opera can be all consuming.
or have we narrowcast our idea of what a singer should be?
Yeah.
Great singers, Maria Malibran, Pauline Viardot, they wrote music.
Yes.
They were composers. They wrote songs.
Yeah.
Even I think Tito Schipa. I mean, it's only we've gotten so narrow in our abilities. Liszt wasn't just a pianist.
No.
Rachmaninoff wasn't just a pianist.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine being a pianist like Rachmaninoff being called just a pianist? But it's important to try other things. What you just outlined with the Italian, but also the songwriting, is sort of a mixture of go to a place that you don't feel is a source of your security, where you'd like to feel secure, and go back to your wellspring. And that's something I'm learning right now that I find interesting. There was one day I was doing some improving at the piano and I sent it to you, didn't I?
Yes, it was beautiful. I loved it.
And I hadn't put much time in on improvising since I was in junior high.
Wow. Yeah.
And I need to sit down and do it again. I feel like it was easy to do that day. It was a beautiful sunny day. I was sitting at a wonderful piano and I thought, okay, why not?
Yeah.
But sometimes creating, even when the circumstances don't feel right, pushing past that, oh, it's hot, oh, the air conditioning's not working very well, pushing past that and going into your little zone, that's something I want to energetically try. If I do that, fortified with plenty of coffee, I think I've totally rediscovered. But one of the things that I've discovered during this time is being a creature of habit in certain ways is a good thing. The average day in quarantine, I've basically eaten exactly the same thing in the course of the day. I have my 2 coffees at the times I have them. And I feel like I'm living like a grandparent, but it actually has freed me up to devote a lot of attention. Let's just say after lockdown ends, there's a lot of things that I used to do without thinking about it, and I'm hoping to do fewer things without thinking about it.
Yeah. I think there is, it's really important. I'm a coach, and I've been saying to people, it is really important to plan and schedule your time. And I liked what we were talking about previously, that we were talking about, yes, plan and schedule your time, but it's also about being, that flexibility as well, having that flexibility. So, yeah, and I've just found that, as we grow on a day-to-day basis, that, like what you were saying, plugging in to our wellspring, really ignites creativity in a way that maybe we won't have noticed before, because we're in a place of stillness where we can actually find the gold or the wealth of it, or the whatever that's coming out of it. So if we're willing to listen and receive.
When you write songs, are they written for your own performance in mind, or not at all? You're hoping to give them to someone else?
No, I just literally. So, for instance, Michael Carter Young, he's also a conductor, and he just said, "Nadine, here's some chords on a piano. I just thought you might like it." That's what he said to me. And so he said, "See if you can put something to it." Literally, within 15 minutes, I'd written a short song.
And have you sung it yet?
Yes, it's online. Walk with me.
I must go back to it. What's the difference in the feeling of communicating your own text as opposed to communicating text by Giacosa and Ilica when you sing Tosca, or by Piave, by a Verdi librettist? What's the difference?
I think the difference is that I have a well of emotions that maybe I wouldn't have access to if I was singing Tosca. I do the character work of Tosca. I take away what's not mine. I keep what's mine, and then I have to find what else she needs in that. And then we have all our other things, which is language and intonation and how it sounds and telling the story and being in costume and da 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 da. But the other night, the beauty of what happened was I didn't have to think about any of that. I wasn't trying to be a character. I wasn't thinking about, standing in front of an audience. I wasn't thinking about any of that. I had a moment in my heart that needed to speak. And for some reason, when he sent those chords, my heart just went, okay, here you go. And it attached itself to every note that he played. And then when they joined together, they were instantly married.
Wow.
That's all
I believe the gap between the two, you were talking about wanting to spend more time in Italy next year.
Yes, I do, yeah.
And I believe the gap between those two experiences will start to narrow.
Yes, absolutely.
It never narrows completely, because to be an actor is different than being a speaker of text.
Yes.
So it's always, there's a certain amount of artifice involved in opera anyway, and I believe that's part of why we love it.
Yes. And
play dress up.
Yes.
We did, towards the end of my time full-time at University of Cape Town, we did a production of Traviata that was very wonderful, and we decided, Angelo Gobbato, who is just one of my favorite people to work with in the world, Angelo was directing it, and we sort of looked both at the resources available and the people singing, and decided, let's just do it in the period, more or less, that Verdi set it in. Let us not get caught up in, it might have looked more 1890s than 1830s, but I mean, all the gentlemen were wearing tuxedos, and they loved it. There were a lot of first and second years in the chorus, young guys who were either from rural Eastern Cape or from Kairij and Guguletu, and the elegance of the music, and they had a chance to match it with the elegance of their bodies. And that meant a lot to them. When we changed the eras of the operas, as we sort of do now, and that's just sort of how it is now, we don't really think much about it. But sometimes, especially for students, to give them an opportunity where they're about creating unity of action, unity of sound, so that everything matches up. The Met had an enormous success this year last season with Akhenaten. Huge success with Philip Glass Akhenaten. And one of the takeaways from them, it's sold out every night, one of the takeaways from that for me is the visual style of the production and the musical style were absolutely inseparable.
Yes, they
And that allows it to become hypnotic, as opposed to there's one channel feeding into your brain heart, but another channel feeding into your brain saying, oh, she's saying, is the horse here yet? But it's actually a 1930s automobile, but it's, not have to translate all the time. When everything is working together. And golden age of opera, when people, whether it's the actual golden age when it was being created with ladies like Malibran and Pasta and Viardot, or whether it was the post-war golden age with people like Callas and Tebaldi and Bergonzi da Monaco di Stefano, all of as many of them as you like, they weren't necessarily having to create two competing realities, the reality of the musical era and the reality of the physical presentation at the same time. We've added so much complication to the plate that it's gotten very far from the simple experience you had singing Walk With Me. And I think part of my job when I'm teaching and coaching and mentoring is never letting people lose that simple connective thread. Yeah. No matter how many new layers are weaved around it and on top of it and underneath it, that somewhere in there, as surely as the wire that carries electricity into the wall is what's carrying Verdi's electricity to those 2,000 people out there, or to the people online, or whatever means we have to transmit it in. The means are just the means. The score is eternal. I really believe.
Yeah. Powerful stuff there, Kamal. Thank you. Just really powerful. I just, I mean, Verdi is massive for me, just simply because I identify with him as a composer, and just maybe the way he started. I don't know. There's something about every opera that I hear of him doing. I really identify with the feelings of the people, and I just really feel like he wrote for the people. There's just, I don't know.
There's such profound humanism in Verdi.
Yeah.
Such profound humanism and humanity.
Yeah.
That, he was born where he was born when he was born, 19th century, rural, certainly not well-to-do.
No.
But at the same time, stubbornly anti-clerical, anti-Catholic. There's no way around it. His wife, Giuseppina, worried a great deal about the status of his immortal soul because she knew that he wasn't really that kind of a believer. And then he wrote the Verdi Requiem, which is, I think, one of the most human responses to death in the musical literature. He was capable of flaws, and he was capable of great generosity. He loved the people. He served in the Italian Senate with great reluctance, and as soon as he could get out of it, he got out of it, despite the fact that he cared very much about the independent Italy, because he knew where he belonged.
Yeah. And it's really great that you say he knew where he belonged, because it is that thing, isn't it, around right now, is that knowing where you belong right now in this part of history that we are all experiencing is really important. Using that part of yourself where you feel you can be of the most useful right now is really important.
We can really drive ourselves mad trying to increase our horizontal imprint. But our arms are only so long. Our horizontal input can only go so far. Whereas if we work down deep, vertical, different story.
Yeah.
It's accepting that we are where we are. Not everyone can march. Not everyone is well advised to march. Some of us have a temper that if we got into a confrontation, it would not go well.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's got to be something left that's going to allow us to continue to create.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of tips, what kind of tips would you give people to kind of say, let's stay creative, or what would you? Yeah.
We've gotten very close to some of these issues as we talk, but my first tip, a very wise man once said to me that the most important thing to do was to ask yourself, where did you get that information? you know, um, I have good solid octaves, but I have lousy broken octaves. Where did I get my information? Why are my broken octaves lousy? Are they lousy? What do people that really know how to play good broken octaves think that it's all about? And now with YouTube, it's easy to see some videos. I found part of how I found my piano teacher, but it was a technical school I'd been fascinated by for years, but too scared to ask. And I saw some videos from people working in that style, and I thought, what they're saying makes so much sense. It sounds like translated to the piano, the kinds of things I'm always saying to singers. This sounds like I would totally understand it. And so far it's been very fulfilling. But I had to drop certain assumptions about how I play. And, now I find myself even dropping certain assumptions about, oh, how much can I really reprogram? I've been doing this for so many years. It's like, maybe a lot. Maybe I can really change a lot of things about the way I play and get even more pleasure out of it and more creativity, more naturalness. So I have to question the tapes, the stories we tell ourselves. I need to question them. I need to say, where did I get that? Because so often when someone pushes somebody else down and I see it, I can tell them, consider the source, move on. But when they've heard it, it's hard to do that.
Yeah.
So this questioning is important. What did someone get out of telling you that?
Yeah.
Who benefits from your repeating this story? So that's number one, the importance of a good, healthy questioning. Cynicism is a disaster. Skepticism is liberating.
Yes.
So that's number one. If I got to do a second tool, I think you touched on it. But I would say establishing a flexible daily routine. Certain things I know I want to do every day, it's good to take all of the necessary steps to do them. On the other hand, if it's noon and I haven't played a B major scale yet, it's really not a crisis. Half the day is still there. And I think when we were all so active in the busy business days of our profession, it was very easy to feel like, oh, I must do this now. I must do this now. Then it's like, no, okay. There's a set of things that help me feel like me. It's a good idea to do them all in the course of a day. And if you miss the occasional day, just make sure it's only occasional, because you'll stop feeling like yourself. So the combination of flexibility and security of routine, I think, is number two. And it sounds like you've done an amazing thing with that already.
Yeah, it has been good. But, actually, because of over the last week, I've actually become a bit more flexible with my routine. Normally, I would plan for the whole week. But at the moment, what I'm finding is what I'm having to do is just to plan for the day. And so as long as I've planned my day each day, I'm okay. At the moment, I will change again to the week's schedule. But I think just at the moment, I've realised, and that's the flexibility. It's about saying to myself, oh, I'd normally plan a week, but actually right now, emotionally, I don't think that's a good thing for me. Because I need to judge how I am day to day, I'm going to just plan my day each day. And that's been really effective for me over the last kind of week.
I think days get fuller. The first year I was in Cape Town, no, the second year I was in Cape Town, third year I was there, 2010. We did a series of 5 20-minute long chamber operas to be commissioned, and then a few years later we did 4 30-minute long chamber operas. So we went through 9 subject matters and had lots of other proposals that the libretti didn't work out, or we couldn't find the right composer for them. But one of the proposals said something which I've never forgotten, even though the opera itself we didn't do, was about how time doesn't pass the same speed in different places. And the person who wrote the libretto was saying how in Durban, in South Africa, in the 1960s, when he was growing up, a Sunday afternoon took longer than a week takes now. Everything was closed, no shops open. For church, you had Sunday lunch with your family, and then that was just the day. And even from my childhood in Virginia, I remember if we went up to my grandmother's on a Sunday and had Sunday lunch then, the day was longer than a day is now. And not in a bad way. It's like, there was playing with the dog in the backyard, there was roast beef, there was taking a nap, there was, if I was good, I got to listen to records afterwards very quietly while everybody else was still sleeping. And those were like Forza del Destino and Don Carlo and things that are still with me. There was watching TV with Granddad. There was me eventually driving home that night. It was a long day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think our days are longer now in quarantine. And after a bit of adjustment, I don't think it's been bad at all. One just moves through more things, and you get to the end of the day, and it's a different sense of completion.
Yeah. And I think we can't, I identify with you. For me, it hasn't been bad either. But I do recognize also, as I know you will, that for some people it has just been a nightmare. So it's that difference, isn't it? That again, we're all in a different state of flux, and
everyone isn't really in the position to use it positively.
Yes, exactly.
That's no judgment on that.
No, absolutely zero.
In New York now, we're in a somewhat open stage. I mean, I'm down here in New Jersey because I'm working with a wonderful friend and colleague, getting him ready to go sing Traviata in Spain. And I'm lucky to have the privilege to see the sea and get fresh air and all of that stuff. Just because people can travel doesn't necessarily mean they can experience that. And it's important. No one is doing less than their best.
No, yeah.
And generally speaking, when we know better, we do better. The difficulty is accepting knowledge that requires us to change.
Exactly. And sometimes common sense isn't always common practice.
Yeah.
So.
Well, because actually, common sense still relates to what can be seen.
Yeah.
And so much in crucial, I mean, and I always understood that most of the crucial stuff in singing technique happened on a level that can't be seen because we cannot cut open our larynxes and see what's happening while they're functioning.
Yeah.
But crucial elements in piano technique are also invisible. Crucial elements in violin technique are also invisible.
Yeah.
So it's like, if this is just the case in the things that I know something about, and almost all the crucial elements in conducting are invisible, even more so. The visible is really just the reflection of the interior life of the music in our souls, and then how well, or how, I'm going to say well, but I can't think of another word, how thoroughly we've trained our bodies to be available to respond to these minute impulses.
Absolutely.
And this all sounds very heady, which I guess leads to my third piece of advice, or my third thing, which is to accept our individuality.
Absolutely.
The way I express myself about this might, even to another musician of great quality, sound, oh, why is he making it so complicated? You just go on stage and you play. Because that is part of the quality too, But to accept, you do just go on stage and you play, but there's a lot going on when that happens. You have to believe that it's worth playing, that it's worth your playing. Somebody needs to hear this music. It gets back to the whole question about live streams. And we've had some colleagues who I respect, some people that I teach, some people that I really adore, saying, this is a bad thing. We're turning this into an amateur business because we're giving it all away for free. And I think I hear them, and I don't think any opera singer, unless they were investors in Zoom, or unless they were investors in Amazon or something, I don't think any opera singers have done well during this period financially. So then it becomes the question of, well, if we're all on sort of uncharted waters anyway, why deprive ourselves of the pleasures of musical creativity? Because ultimately it is something I do for me, and it's been wonderful to be able to do it as a career. But it was never a calculated decision. It was never like, oh, I'll do better doing this than I would do in electrical engineering. It was just like, this is what I want to do. Oh, they pay you for this as well? Fabulous.
Yeah. I mean,
that's kind of the last thought of it.
No, but it is wonderful to watch in you, actually, because there is and I might not have the full wealth of words to be able to explain who you are as a person, but there is a wealth of gold in you that is just I mean, I feel like you're an encyclopedia as well as being such a master of the piano. And then, and then you'll hear something in a voice and you can just be able to pinpoint. I watched Soprano do that once, where somebody was just singing something and he just went, if you just do this, and you're so great at that as well, having that kind of ear, and then getting someone to see a whole phrase and the whole arc of an opera. I mean, I learned my ballo with you, my Amelia from Ballo, and I never forget how you just wanted me to make it quite structured. I had a very short time to learn it in. And because of the way that you helped me structure it, I was able to learn it even faster, And you just have this genius quality about you, Kamal. I mean, that's the only way I can describe it. Somebody may describe it in another way, but for me, there's a genius quality in you, and I think you are just such a huge contribution to the world of opera. You just really are, and I know that there are other singers who have just praised you and just have so much respect for you, because we just love what you do.
That's just so beautiful to hear. Somebody said something to me. I went to see one of my students from South Africa do their European debut.
Yeah.
It was a Carmen in Lisbon. It was Lucanio Moyake. And I was watching the rehearsals and everybody was great. And it suddenly hit me. It was a young conductor, young everything. I'm thinking, oh boy, I've probably been around this opera with God, man. I've probably been around this opera longer than anybody in this room. Even the first time I played rehearsals for it, it was Marilyn Horne. I mean, it was yesterday. And the great thing about it was all I was there to do was to try to bring value. If I saw a little place where, and some wonderful colleagues that weren't my students who were in the cast, but still had some questions. And it was great to be able to do that. The hard thing that I think, or my next project for once all of this ends and we return to whatever normal is, or we return to whatever aspects of normal will serve us, is to realize actually that's all we're ever trying to do, is to add value to circumstances, add value to the lives of the audience that are hearing it, to add something of value to the work of the people we're working with. Part of it is so they simply go home from a day of rehearsal stimulated and excited and wanting more. It's never going to be 100% because everybody doesn't walk into the room with the same feelings. You do a piece like Boccanegra or Don Carlo or Aida, and you've got 130 psyches that are affected by things you do in a rehearsal. It's never going to have the same effect on all of them.
No, exactly.
But you want to keep people coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think, I'm going to close there. But before we close, just the overall arc of what we've been talking about, do you have any final thoughts that you just think, oh, yeah, can I leave them with this?
Any final thoughts?
Yes. That you think? You don't have to, but if you do.
I think that my main thought is our creativity and our relationship to our work has always been personal and private. And it was easy to hide from that when everything was a gig. It's quite freeing to connect to that and just worry about making deeper music, better music, more satisfying music. On the one hand, that makes it sound so severe, but on the other hand, in this current environment, it's like, and if it's not getting deeper and more satisfying, go make a cup of coffee, go do something else, and come back. We have that option. When you're in an orchestra rehearsal, it's 3 hours, and they've got to be so structured and so scheduled. It's like you can actually do beautiful, deep work a different way by yourself.
Thank you.
That's what this time is for, I think, for me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for being and for watching. It's been really lovely for you to share this conversation with Kamal and I. And Kamal, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure just
Thank you, Nadine.
and spend some time with you. And
I just am so awestruck by how you find ways to reach more and more people, even at times when it would appear that we can reach less and less. Instead of you just turn that on its head and say, no, let's do this, let's do that. It's very freeing.
Thank you so much. I just do that thing where I'm just listening. I still being the vessel, but listening in another way, as they say. So thank you. And so I'm just glad that I've got the most amazing people in my life for me to be able to connect to, and to be able to share them with, So thank you so much, Kamal. Take care. We'll see you soon. And take care.
Great day.
Thank you.